Hey everybody, what is up? I can't believe we're already here. It is night 3 of the Salary Cap Summit, and we've had 2 fun nights already behind us. We had a 1QB auction on Sunday night, and we had a Superflex auction last night with a couple extra flexes thrown in. That thing was interesting, and I tell you what, we got some interesting results, and we can talk about some of that tonight. But first of all, I just want to say thank you so much for being here. For all of you that have been here, have been watching the live streams, have been communicating in the chat. This has been a really, really fun couple of nights for me. And tonight is going to be just as fun, maybe, dare I say, a little bit better, because we get to talk to some of the best auction minds in the entire business. We've got on deck for you tonight Jim Coventry from RotoWire. We've got Dave Richard from CBS. We've got Doug Orth from The Huddle. And we've got Scott Pianowski from Yahoo. And, of course, we have a special treat that we get about once a year. And that's Mr. Matt Kruse, the auctioneer from the Jim Brown division. He is standing by to fill in some gaps for us later because we want to talk to a guy who watches the stuff and is heavily involved in this stuff, but isn't actually emotionally involved in what's going on, because that gives us insights we don't often get. So we're going to spend at least 2 hours tonight. Now, let me just say, last year, Scott Pianowski and I and Matt Kruse, we got going, and we went probably 40, 45 minutes long last year. I think we went almost 3 hours last year because people were here, they were listening, they were enjoying it, and we said, let's keep going. And you know, I always say this, when you listen to the auction brief, you'll hear me say over and over, I could talk to you about this for hours, but I got to go, because that's how I genuinely feel. The auction format has no boundaries. It's not a linear concept. It's not something that ever runs out of topics, because we can talk about everything that happened for the past 2 nights, and we could do just that. But we're not going to. We're going to talk about that, and we're going to talk about how do we push this format forward, front and center? How do we solve some of the problems that auction drafts seem to present to people, the barriers that prevent them from getting into what I believe is the best way to draft a fantasy football team. And so we're definitely going to go. The comments are already starting. Alexander, thank you so much. We're going to get Jim Coventry in here in just 1 second. But thank you, Alexander. I appreciate that. It kind of feels like that because I'm a little bit overextended right now. Gotta say, the Salary Cap Summit is something I aim for all summer, and I'm so pumped about it. But hey, when I get a little bit of rest and time with the family tonight, that won't be a bad thing either. But for now, I'm locked in. We're pumped up. I'm excited. I'm hopped up on Coke and applesauce, and we're going to do this again. And nobody could have predicted coming into the Salary Cap Summit that the biggest topic at night 2 was going to be the applesauce, right? I mean, you never know what's going to happen here on the auction brief. Thank you again so much for tuning in. And I want to tell you just real quick, if you want to take a look at the draft boards, because we might be talking about that a little bit tonight. If you want to take a look at the draft boards, I have the draft boards posted, and they are under the last tweet I did about 15 minutes away from the final night, because I know a lot of people want to access those boards. Those are publicly accessible there, so definitely check those out so you know what we're talking about tonight. All right, let's not mess around anymore, and let's get Jim Coventry in here from RotoWire. Jim drafted against me in the Jim Brown room. Actually, let's flip that around. I was the guest in the Brown room. I drafted against Jim because it's his room. Let's get him in here. Jim, how we doing, buddy?
Drew Davenport, never tell an audience that you're hopped up on Coke and applesauce, because the applesauce they get, but the other part, they might not be sure that can in your hand is really what you meant.
It's a Coke Zero. You're right, buddy. You're right. Probably shouldn't have said that. Hey, maybe we'll get some extra viewers. Like, what's this guy on Coke going to do? But it is Coke Zero. Thank you. That gave me a chuckle here. I'm a little thrown. Jim, tell everybody where you're from and where they can find your work. Thank you so much for coming on.
Appreciate you. I work for RotoWire, and I have been covering fantasy football for over 20 years, been playing over 30 years. I'm old, all it really means, I think. But I'm outside of that. My big work is on the X at Jim Coventry NFL. I'm putting out 7 pieces of content a day, 2 short videos, 5 days a week a stream, but then every day 2 stat cards for fantasy. And then I do 2 threads a day. So yeah, I'm putting the stuff out there, having a little bit of fun, but just trying to help everybody win their leagues.
Yes, and he does. He puts out so much content. I don't know anybody that's pushing more content on a daily basis than Jim is, and I'm just trying to keep up with you, buddy. I have been pushing more this summer, but I tell you what, we are hitting that point where I feel like I've said everything I'm going to say about 57 times. And then I've also had about the same, or I've had a different take about the same guy. I've gone like, oh, I love him, and oh, somebody persuaded me today that that's a bad opinion. So we're getting into that zone, but that's why I've got the experts coming on tonight. We want to focus it around auctions, but we can talk values too, because we have a couple draft boards. And so I know you're not looking at the boards, but I'll throw out a couple numbers here at some point. But let's start. Let's start meta. Let's start with the big picture. And the question I asked last year is a question I'm going to start with again this year, which is anybody who does auctions, we love them. We swear by them. We think they're the most fun thing to do. It doesn't mean that we hate snakes. It just means that we love auctions. When you sit down in the room, the juices that flow in an auction are different. And so how do we convince people that it is different and that they're going to love it when they get in there?
We all know this. In a snake draft, no matter wherever you're picking, you do not have access to certain players unless you do something really crazy. For example, if you are picking in the first spot in the draft, yes, you're going to have access to any player you want, but realistically, it's Bijan Robinson, Jameer Gibbs, or Jamar Chase. But then by the time you come around the 2-3 turn, there are probably at least 15 or 16 players that you will never have access to. And that goes for every stage of the draft, because you could reach up, but then at that point, you really have access to that player. You do, but you don't, because you really compromise your team. But when you are in an auction, you can set forth a strategy to target a larger number of players, knowing you won't get them all, but knowing that within that group of players, you might have 7 wide receivers you really like, and you could budget money to make sure 3 of them are on your team. And so it allows you that flexibility to put your team together, your flag plants, your sleepers. And this is something that makes it super fun, because why just have a team where fate dealt it to you for the most part, other than a couple of reaches?
Yeah, I totally, and I don't know a better way to tell people how, like, that's so much fun. You have the entire draft board and you can just kind of like pick, these are your guys. And I tell you what, it does give you a level of responsibility that's a bit terrifying, because, if you're off on your guys, you're off on your guys. I'm still talking about Martavis Bryant all these years later, because he ruined a couple seasons for me. But look, I don't know a better way to say it. Like, and I also say this to people all the time, that if you are a talented fantasy analyst and talented fantasy player, the auction format really magnifies your strengths, doesn't it?
This is the one thing you need to know. If you have not played in an auction, look, the first time you do it, it's going to be a little uncomfortable, because you'll find that you may be playing checkers that first time. You may have values. You may be in the auction. You may just kind of get caught in the craziness and the fun and the adrenaline of the auction. But practice some auctions first. Practice them that aren't going to cost you money. Even if it's a mock and it doesn't matter, just practice it, because the beauty of an auction is once you get used to the format and how you fit into that, you will learn to play chess and not checkers. You're watching how the board's evaporating. You're watching how much players are going for. You're fixing it in your mind what range you're going to be able to spend on a player. You will be making changes to your plan in real time. Drew, there are very few times the plan I went into an auction with was the plan that I ended up having, because the room is always different. I call an auction poker and fantasy football in a hybrid environment. That's what you're playing, a poker game. You have to read people, and even if you don't see them, if it's an online auction. You still have to read the room, and it is one of the biggest rushes that you will ever have.
Yeah, I think I say that all the time about the rush. You know that feeling when you walk up to the draft board and you get to put a sticker on the board, or it's your turn to pick, and you kind of get that little shot of adrenaline, and you can't get that in a snake. I mean, you get it when you make that one pick, but then you sit there for a half hour and wait for your next pick. You know, I whatever we can beat that dead horse all night. That's going to get me in trouble with some kind of organization, but I don't think that we the excitement should come through from us, but what do we do as industry guys? Like, what? How do we kind of push this forward to convince people? I don't want to be in everybody's face all the time, like browbeating people. But how do we push this format forward? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I just thought of this now. The whole world is becoming short videos, short content because attention spans are near zero. Literally showing a video clip of a one player auction, like a dynamic auction where two people are like or four people or in a frenzy, and then it goes down to
I'm
three,
taking
and it
notes.
goes out to show a video clip of a real auction when people are doing that. And when somebody watches that, they're going to see the tension and they're going to hear the excitement and they're going to be like, you know what? This is the way I want that. I just thought of that now. I think that is a way. If people see and they feel that energy, they might not be able to pass it up.
Yeah, and this actually reminds me of something that I've been talking about since I talked to Joe Dolan over at Fantasy Points about auctions, because he's also one of the auction minds I really respect. And he made a similar analogy, and I think that you two have just hit on something for me, which is great, because despite the thousands of hours I spend with this stuff, I'm still getting insights to this day, and that's why we have people like you and Joe and all the guests tonight. But I think you made a great comment here, because what Joe said was, and I don't want to tell the story for the umpteenth time, but the short version is that when Dave Matthews was getting big, the Dave Matthews Band, they knew that to sell themselves, they needed to get people's butts and seats. They weren't a good, like, hey, throw on my CD kind of band. They were a, we need people to see how good we are and experience us live. And I think that that's what you're saying here too, is you got to feel that tension and that excitement and that. I love the videos that came out from the King's Classic of the auctioneer in the other room, and we had some of that stuff. And so I think that you've hit on something there, and I've been thinking about, like, well, a big barrier is the length, and then I think sometimes that maybe the length is an excuse. It's a bit of like, hey, I'm intimidated by this, so I'm going to say this takes too long. I don't know what that is, but let's not continue down that path any further. I like your insight here, but let's talk actual auction stuff here now. I know we're at the Salary Cap Summit. I know people use both words here, but if I say salary cap draft or auction, we're talking about the same thing, just so everyone knows. But I guess what I'd like to start talking about is the Jim Brown auction for just a little bit, okay? And we've got Matt Kruse waiting in the wings. We might not get to him until the second hour. But I I had some different thoughts about the auction than I thought I was going to have, because there's not a lot of guys in that room that specialize in auction. And I was expecting there to be a little bit more wackiness, or maybe a little bit more impetuousness, maybe just people kind of acting impulsively, kind of, just not crazy, but just I expected some of that. I saw almost none of that. Did that surprise you a little bit, or you kind of know these guys pretty well?
So, in that room of 14 analysts, probably seven or eight have been at it a good number of years and have learned a feel for that room. And I really think at that point, it's look, if you're a professional poker player, you're playing against the same people over and over.
Yeah,
And sometimes it's really hard, like to bluff or things like that, if people really kind of know your game. So I think it becomes, you still have the adrenaline. You still have the fun. And we were laughing very hard and having a great time
fun
during
room.
that. But the thing was, it was business. It was very much business, and everybody kind of knows what their plan is, what their budgets are, and very few people get caught up. And then there being a couple people with a hammer later, and that really put a kind of a wrinkle in late into the auction. But it was
Mhm.
really, it was fun, but it was business.
It was. We laughed a ton. I feel like that was the most I've laughed in a Kings Classic room. Just some really funny guys, Patrick Doherty and Matt Harmon and I'm sitting next to Pianowski, and of course he's dropping little comments over here to me. But it was a fun room. But you're absolutely right about the business aspect because it was strong. And I will say that I was just sort of unimpressed with my performance. Having said that, I don't hate my team. I was just unimpressed. So let's start there, okay? Because I don't have your team in front of me right now. It would probably make a better show if I did, but I'm guessing you know it a little bit better than me. How did you feel just overall about how you performed in the auction? And then we can talk about some specific prices after that.
I did drop my team in the chat for you if you're able to see it, the private chat. I think on the
Perfect.
thing, but it's not
Yes.
formatted great. But I put there. So I always realized that I hadn't saved money at quarterback, and boy, it's one of those if I could have it back moments. I got exactly what I wanted. I spent $6 for 4 on Kyler Murray, 2 on Baker Mayfield. I was going in with 2 quarterbacks who are quarterbacks 16 and 18 in ADP, but I feel they both can be quarterback ones this year, and mixing and matching them made me extremely happy. And then I come to find out after Josh Allen went for 21, we normally have like a second class of quarterbacks that go in the 15 to 20 range. That didn't happen. The next 4 or 5 quarterbacks, it was 4, went for $12 each, and we were already in the single digits. Now, yes, saving a few dollars does matter. And realistically, if you want one of those top 13 quarterbacks, the price was at least $7. So, okay, so I did save $3, but I might, going back, have been happy to spend $3 more to maybe get Trevor Lawrence or maybe even Dak Prescott. I'm still somewhat happy with the quarterbacks I have, but this was that was a surprise. Almost every year we have that second class, and that wasn't there. Didn't ruin the auction, but it really changed. And the other thing was last year in this exact draft room, I got the steal of the auction. First off the board, a tight end was Brock Bowers for 23. I had McBride ahead of him last year, and it wasn't close. And I sung that from the mountaintops. So I go, oh, I'm going to get McBride for at least at the same. Got him for 23, and he ended up breaking fantasy football. But this year, market fixed it. Bowers was $36. So right then, because I was thinking, what could I get a tight end for? So anyway, I'm just going to start there.
Yeah, I think that's a great comment. I want to talk about the quarterbacks. I'm going to take these in reverse order because the Bowers comment is something that I've been thinking a lot about it because the night before when I was preparing my par sheet and I was thinking about tight end, the first thought in my head was, well, are these guys going to be more conservative and they're not going to pay up into the mid or upper 30s for Bowers like you might see in some home leagues, might even sneak into the 40s in some home leagues. And I thought, well, I wonder if that happens, I'm going to be ready to go. And then I think he went for 35 or 36, right?
36.
36, yeah. And so I think it's a good thought, but you're right. The market corrected itself because you can't be letting those elite tight ends go in the low 20s. And again, these are smart guys, so they adjusted quickly. But great point there. The other thing about the quarterbacks, I thought it was very interesting because I ended up with Drake May for $6, and I think that's about the only. Yeah, I feel like it is. I think that's about the only auction expert guy thing I did. But when I look back on it, it really just happened by accident because most of the quarterbacks were going that cheap, and I could have easily ended up with one of those other guys. But I knew I was a little bit hamstrung early from going to 49 on St. Brown. So it's quarterback more than anything. I preach this all the time. It is about the nomination timing for quarterbacks because when you get late and people don't have any money, that tends to be the position like there's too many of these, I'm not messing with it. So let me talk about a couple guys that you got. So I love the quarterback tight end discussion there. But I want to talk about a couple of the guys that are on your team. I liked your approach at wide receiver with A.J. Brown and George Pickens. You got them for a total of 70 between the two of them. Now, you ended up getting DJ Moore for 22. So you ended up spending 92 on your top 3 receivers. Was that by design, or did you feel a little bit pressured from the prices?
I spent a few more dollars than I wanted. I did a lot 36 for AJ Brown, spent an extra dollar. A dollar's a dollar. It's more than I should have spent. Pickens
Mm,
at 33, I allotted 31, so I lost another $2 there.
okay.
And DJ Moore actually was exactly what I allotted, but it's a few extra dollars.
Yeah.
And I lost a few dollars on a number of players I wanted, which
Hmm.
ended up hurting me for a bench. I always try to come out of this 14 team leagues. I usually have a bench. I don't have a bench in this league.
Yeah.
Call it what you will. Do not have a decent bench. So, but the approach was I did want to get the non superstar receivers, but I really paid superstar receiver costs for AJ Brown. I probably shouldn't have done that. It probably was a luxury. And I wanted two. And I love DJ Moore. I love his situation. And at 22, I know he'd go a little cheaper. So I should have gone either Pickens or Brown, and I should have spent down for the third receiver. But I was noticing as this auction went on, even down to like a wide receiver 35, 36, they were still going at $20 each. So I
Yeah.
noticed the salaries, there were no bargains. And I said, all right, I'll spend those couple extra dollars and I'll have three really good starters. Yes,
Very
exactly.
consistent decline, but it never went like this.
No,
And you usually see that. But again,
right.
I think that's a testament to these guys, and they know what they're doing. And they also know values so well. When I look back at some of the wide receiver cores, there's some really strong wide receiver rooms. I don't have one of them. And it's a product of going for St. Brown. But I told myself as I was sitting there and the bidding was winding down in the upper 40s, I said, I'm going to be pissed at myself if I'm looking at St. Brown in the 40s for the next 3 hours. So I'm just going to bid 49, and I wasn't going to go above that. And then I ended up getting him. I lost $17 there because my top wide receiver was supposed to be 32. But I'm okay with it. I'm never worried about paying up for the top talent. And I'll just come back later and see what I can get. Now, whether or not, Romeo Dobbs or Kyle Monangai or J.K. Dobbins turns out to be worth it, because that's what I had to slough off to after going with St. Brown. I ended up with those marginal guys instead. Let's swing back to your roster here. At running back, I want to specifically ask you about the two guys at the top of your running back squad, because they're two guys coming off an injury, and there are guys that I've been telling people I'm a little nervous about, but yet if the price is there, boy oh boy, it could really give you an injection in your squad's ability, because you can spend elsewhere. And that's Cam Scadaboo for $26 and Quinshon Judkins for 27. Have you found that you're chasing those guys, or have you found that they've just fallen in the right value pocket for you?
14 teams. You want the bench. You understand the room. I was not spending up for a running back. Last year, I was able to get running backs in the $30 to $32 range. That range was not really existent. Like the top 14 running backs were pretty much really 36 to 38. And I think Devon H. went for 34. And then again, the drop off was very slight. You have to get two starting running backs. There's 14 teams, so you need 28 starting running backs. And so I was not getting priced out of them. And here's the deal with Scadaboo and Judkins specifically, because these two names will come up, and they will be players that we'll talk about, like you said, in auctions. They both were cleared extremely early from dislocated ankles. That's young players. You're young. If these guys were 27, 28, they would not
Yeah.
be cleared. They would be limping through game. They're already they were literally close to full goes in OTAs. So
Yeah.
when you're telling me that, oh yeah, if there's a discount there, I think both have the ability to be strong RB2s. Like they could finish like RB 15ish. And I'm not. The injuries were both freak injuries last year. The dislocated ankle. I want everybody to know this too. I've been talking for 2 years now. I said, buy your running backs, because the injuries are going to be far lessened. You'll get twisted knees and ankles, but there's two linebackers on the field instead of three. They're 230 in the weight. They're no longer guided missiles. Offenses have an extra blocker. These guys are not taking kill shots much anymore. So the running backs definitely, bite the trend. They're going to mostly stay healthy. But for that cost to get two of them for $53, that put me in a good state to at least build a strong starting unit for my team.
Yeah. I think that conversation, I think I'm going to put a note in my calendar for every offseason from now for the next 3 years. because what our defense is going to do now that the NFL has finally stopped banging their head against the wall, against the two deep and the shells, and now we're seeing a trend. Of course, it took a guy like Sean McVay to lead the charge. I've been quoting this stat all off season. I can't believe it's real, but he always ran 11 personnel at one of the highest rates in the NFL since coming into the league. And last year, suddenly, he popped up with over 30%, 13 personnel last year with 3 tight ends on the field. What's that?
Timeout. This is very important. Everybody has to know this.
Okay.
Drew, no offense. My line this summer has been the laziest stat you'll hear all summer is the Rams ran tight ends 13%, 30%.
Okay.
They didn't even start running it till week 9, Drew. After a week 8 bye, it was 46 to 50% of the time from the time they started until they had tight end injuries in week 15.
Okay.
Now, and they drafted Max Lar. So 30%, yes. Aggregate for the season, yes. But that was not their identity until later. And at that point, there was only one receiver on the field because the math is you can't have 2. So It was a big, big chain reaction. So there's going to be a lot of fallout, which in this show, we're doing an auction brief, so I'm not going to go through all the fallout of this. But understand this. It's more than anybody thinks. And there are about 7 rosters that are now positioned to be able to run 13 personnel, 3 tight ends significantly if they choose to do so.
Yeah. And so that's great. Thank you for the clarification. Again, that's why we have you here. And I just thought it was wild, too, because the next closest team, I believe, was at 14%. So they more than doubled team number 2 in 13 personnel, which is wild. But then other teams are going, oh, McVay, the genius, is doing this. We can do this, too. And they're also talking about Terrence Ferguson, note for you late round tight end people, as their essentially third receiver on the field instead of, they're calling him a tight end, but he's going to be used like that. So, it's funny because I look back at the snap shares for the Rams and Puka Nacua and Devontae Adams, their snap shares went down, even though Nakua's efficiency was insane anyway, because that's just who he is. But Adams, it resulted in, the low catch totals despite the touchdowns. So, okay. Well, Jim, I'm going to get you out of here in just a couple minutes. I've got Dave Richard waiting in the wings. We're going to get him in here. But we didn't get to talk about the 2 drafts from the previous 2 nights. But back to the Kings Classic. Let me just say this. Is there anything that I know we talked about your overall build here, but is there anything you want to talk about with respect to the tight end strategy?
Yes.
Because I like the strategy, and we've talked about this in previous years, which, it sucked this year that I didn't get to talk to you before the draft because we compared strategies. This year we were against each other, but you drafted 4 tight ends. You drafted Tyler Warren for $20, Mark Andrews for $8, Gadsden for $5, and TJ Hawkinson for $1, which, by the way, if anybody had any money, they would have been smart to say 2 there on Hawkinson. But hey, you got 4 guys, and I'm assuming you're planning on flexing some of those guys. Was that a focus going in to grab those guys as flex players?
Yes, and this quickly builds on what we just talked about with the 46 to 50% 3 tight end usage the Rams use. Other teams are going to build that up. This year, if you are in an auction or a draft that has multiple flex spots or it's tight end premium, the tight ends are going to be a cheat code this year. The ones that are not the typical dominant ones, they are going to see more targets and more snaps than they've ever seen in the past. So targeting Mark Andrews, Aronde Gadsden, Hawkinson, these guys are going to see far more targets than they've seen in the past, even when there's more 2 tight end sets. So I want everybody to know that. Again, if it's just a 1 flex league, it might not matter, but the deeper leagues, get those tight ends that are not the premium names because they are going to build the floor of your team and help you win that championship.
I like the idea, and I started out to do that, and instead I ended up with 2 trash piles as my tight ends. So I'm sorry I don't want to offend Colby Parkinson's family here, but I didn't do well at tight end. Well, hey, Jim, you've been very generous with your time tonight. Thank you so much for coming on. Just don't forget, everybody, that we can find him on socials at Jim Coventry NFL, and then you can find him over at RotoWire. Folks, he's not hard to find. So if you can't find his stuff, you ain't looking. Okay, this is a dear friend of mine who, by the way, we have to resurrect Thursday lunch next year in Canton. What do you say?
100% we are on for
Okay.
that, and I also owe you a phone call soon.
Okay, yeah, all good, brother. And I missed getting to hang out with you very much this weekend, but it's always good to see you, dear friend Jim Coventry, also fantasy extraordinaire and auction expert. Thank you so much for being on the show, Jim.
This is great. Thanks for having me, and have fun, everybody. Thanks, Drew.
All right, Jim Coventry, folks. Let's get the next man of the hour on here. Gave me a little bit of a heart attack this afternoon. I'm not coming on at 7:30. And I'm sure Dave had a good time with that, but I sussed it out. The little upside down smiley face. Dave, thanks for coming on, man.
Did you really think I was going to miss this, Drew?
Well, God, I don't know, man. I don't know. Bray, Chad's messing with me. Quit feeding us lazy stats, Davenport. No, I didn't think you were going to miss it, but then somebody messaged me and says, "Hey, is Dave coming on?" And I'm like, I'm pretty sure he's kidding. So anyway, thanks for being here, man. I'm sure it's a crazy time of the year, so everybody out there appreciates you giving us the time. What are you working on right now?
There's nothing else I would rather be doing right now because my White Sox are down 6-0 in the first inning against the Boston Red Sox. I think they're Jim's White Sox too. I know he was just on. My son is at the game. Spent a lot of money to sit fifth row behind the White Sox dugout, and now it's 6-0. So I don't really have a whole lot going on other than, keeping up with training camp news on 32 teams, evaluating which players seem to be doing well in camp and what the roles are in camp, what it means for the future, how to spin it toward fantasy so that everybody's good strategies. Oh, I've written a strategy piece for each of the big four positions in fantasy. You know what they are. I just redid my tiers. That's up on cbssports.com right now. We just kicked off our Fantasy Football Today Draftathon, where we're raising money for St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. We've got our live show every day on YouTube. Search for Fantasy Football Today.
So nothing then. You're not doing anything.
It's a quiet time of the year.
Yeah, sitting by the pool with a beer. Yeah. All right. Well, hey, we missed you in Canton, man. What happened?
I turned 50. That's what happened.
Oh, so did I. I turned 50 in May. Congratulations.
Yeah,
Welcome to the club.
I turned 50 on 7/24, and that was the day that everything was happening at the expo. And I love you guys. And I'm really a big fan of what Bob does.
Yeah.
And I'm not spending my 50th birthday with you guys. I'm sorry. So
Ouch.
Spent the day with my family, and I'm an alum of the University of Miami, so I went down to Miami's campus and
awesome.
Found my fountain of youth.
I was about to say, acted like you were young again, right?
Well, if I did the things that I did in Miami when I was young, I'd probably be arrested.
I always say I don't know how I made it here.
Yeah.
After the things I think about that I did in college, we'll swap stories sometime.
There were no iPhones when we went to college.
Exactly.
That's for the best.
Exactly. So, hey, are you coming back next year?
I'm questionable for next year just because the dates are the same and it's my 51st birthday, and we'll see. I mean, it's not nearly the milestone that 50 is. I don't even know where my kids are going to be next summer, but I missed it. And I was tabbed to participate in the online version of the King's Classic, and I didn't even get a spot in there. Bob big time me. wait till he sees this, because he didn't. He made a mistake, and otherwise I would have been in there. And at worst case scenario, next year I'll be online for the Classic.
Okay. All right. Well, I did miss seeing you. I like our little hurried chats in the hallway about the strategy. But yeah, I got bumped up to Brown, but I think that might only be for 1 year until next year.
My spot.
Yeah. Well, there was a couple new faces. Pianowski was bumped up. Marcus Grant, Michael Florio, and then I took Bob Harris's spot because but I think he's going to be back next year, so I may be demoted next year. But hey, yes, JJ, I agree. 50 is great. I'm loving 50. I'm having a good time. Did you do anything? Are you going to do anything extra special? I'm taking a little trip this weekend with just the wife and no kids, getting away from the content grind for a couple days. People. What a great time it is. I mean, we love it. We get in that room, we start bidding. Man, we love it. So how do we convince them that our love is deserved and they should give it a shot? Well,
in order to give it a shot, you've got to be willing to put yourself out there. And the thing that people worry about, and I think I told you the same thing last year, Drew, it's the buying a car theory. No one wants to get ripped off. And so the whole idea of being in a room with other people that are going to be bidding on players that you're going to want, if they're bidding 28 when you're bidding 27 and they're bidding 31 when you're bidding 30, that part of it can be intimidating. And people don't like the feeling of not knowing what they're doing and not having that order and control that they have when it comes to a snake draft. So what I really think it is if you're going to recruit people to try auctions, someone who's already in the auction league has to tell both the new person and everybody else, let's be a little patient with the new guy, and tell the new guy, hey, don't worry, we're going to be patient with you too. We want you to have a good time. We want you to have a competitive team. Other than that, I think if you find yourself wanting to try an auction and you're not with such nice people in your league, just prepare yourself. And that's the other problem. This is what I've learned from 20 plus years of talking fantasy football for a living. People don't want to do the work. They want us to do the work.
That's true.
They want to go to your site and get your auction values and your auction strategies. And they think that just by scanning your work, they're going to be okay for their auction draft. And it takes a little bit more than that. You've got to understand the little nuances of auctions, the willingness to spend that extra buck, the willingness to, or maybe not willingness, but the restraint to not police, what do they call it? I'm blanking on the term right now.
Enforcing. Bidding people up, price enforcing.
Yeah. Price enforcing. Yeah, being a jackass. Like, you can't do that stuff. So you've got to be patient. You've got to have restraint, and you've got to be a little bit willing to go the extra mile for the players that you truly believe in. You got to know who those players are too. And you could take our word for it. I mean, we know what we're doing. We've been successful in our auctions, but it's a matter of you being comfortable. And I just think that people don't want to do the work necessary to feel comfortable with auctions. But here's the dirty secret. And I'm glad everybody's watching who's thinking about being in an auction. It's not that much work, and it's actually kind of fun because you get to figure out what you're willing to spend on each player. And remember, it's not like you only have 100 fictional dollars to spend in your auction and everybody else in your league has 200 or 300. Everybody starts on the same plane. Everybody decides what they want to spend on the big guys or the little guys. And there's no one winning strategy. You can build a team with a bunch of guys that you would take in rounds 3, 4, and 5, and you'll get a lot of really good depth on your team without necessarily having the superstar. Of course, you might find that superstar in the 3rd and 4th rounds of your snake drafts, and then you might bid 10% of your budget to get that superstar on your team. And that's the goal, is to try and get players at a cheap value and then have them explode and be stars on your team. And doing the research to find those guys and to say, all right, I want to have Emeka Ibuka on my team this year. I want to have Jalen Waddle. I believe in these guys. Man, that's part of the fun. That's part of what builds up the anticipation. And then when you feel comfortable and confident, you'll go into your draft. And this is really, it applies to snake too. You'll feel comfortable going in there and knowing what direction you want to go in, who you like, who you hate, and everything falls into place from there. It's really simple. So it's really not that hard. It's some work, but it's fun work.
That's what I always say. We can call it work, and then it gets a negative connotation. But when I'm sitting there looking at which guys I want, how I'm going to like shoehorn my budget to just get the perfect build, that's fun for me. And I guess maybe if that isn't fun for somebody, maybe they're not going to enjoy auctions. But I think once you get in the room and you get the juices flowing, you want to do it more. And so I think that it's on us as industry folks to, I guess I can call myself that now, like, what do we do to push this forward? I mean, how do we make people, or maybe even not even people, this is less about getting people into auction rooms, but more about like, how do we be stewards of the game? How do we be stewards of the format?
And this is a question you've asked before too. And unfortunately, I feel like we've made almost no headway.
I agree.
In the last year and maybe even like the last 5 years. I mean, we're talking about the King's Classic, and that's one of the biggest industry drafts in fantasy every year. And people aren't really digging the auction. They're not trying to replicate that.
Yeah.
So what would it take? Well, I think awareness is a really important thing. And people like you do the best job you can raising awareness for auction drafts. I know that my platform discusses auction values and auction drafts from time to time on our show and in our content, but we don't really go as hard at it as we normally could. So I think awareness is the first part. The second part is people aren't even sure where they can go to play in a fantasy league with auction values. I can tell you right now that CBS Sports has had it. We've had an auction room complete with a virtual auctioneer for years and years, and it works great, and it's a lot of fun. And I think that if people know, okay, auction drafts exist, there's a platform you can play on, and there's content out there that can help me get ready for this new way to draft. And maybe that's what we need to do, Drew. Maybe we just need to say, hey, this is the new cool thing in fantasy. Because remember, like guillotine leagues were the new cool thing for a while.
Yeah.
Super flex things are cool now. Half PPR is coming back in vogue. Best ball, obviously. Man, maybe we just need to, our noses will grow a little bit and tell a white lie, but we'll say, hey, something cool and new is coming to the fantasy.
We have this new
auction
thing.
draft. Right. And maybe that'll work. Maybe we can snooker some people into it while all the grizzled vets will say, they've been around forever. And they're right. But raising awareness and letting people know that they can easily play it on any platform, certainly CBS, that's two big things right there.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And something Jim said before you came on, we were talking about the excitement of it. And he said, it'd be fun to see it like a little short form video of just one player being auctioned off, like in a live room. And you could kind of feel the tension and the back and forth and the excitement.
Yeah, ESPN tried that once upon a time. It did not go well for them.
It did not.
If you actually took video from King's Classic, and then if people saw the back and forth that is there live in person at the Pro Football Hall of Fame between faces that they know from the fantasy industry, that would go a long way. I like that idea. Jim's on to something there. Makes me think that we need to, pitch in for a cameraman to cut up some B-roll for us and put that out there next year.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I keep coming back to is there's got to be some kind of way that we can do this and approach it differently. But I do want to talk about some actual prices from some of these drafts that happened the last couple nights. I don't know that we're going to get into the Superflex one, but I'm going to share my screen here on, let's see, the 1QB League. Let's do that. Yeah, I'm going to pull up some prices here for everybody. Let me make sure this is the right one. I hope this is the right one. Yes, it is. Okay. So we've got that, and I'm going to flip us to the side here. Okay, looks good. I don't know if everybody's going to be able to see that perfectly, but let me ask you about quarterback first of all. This is a one quarterback TV veteran. Let me ask you about some
Doug. What's up, Doug?
Doug will be on a little bit later. He's going to talk about his Brown experience too. But I'm looking at some of these quarterbacks here. Tell me which guy you are in coming into the year. Now, keep in mind this is a $200 salary cap. But we've got Josh Allen who went for 20. We had Lamar Jackson go for 16. And Drake May went for 18. And then there was a massive gap. And this is something that Jim Coventry and I talked about, that there wasn't like a slow decline at quarterback. There wasn't a mid-tier of $12 quarterbacks. It just fell off a cliff. This happened in the King's Classic. Of course, that's not what we're dealing with here, but the same thing happened. So we went from $16 Lamar Jackson all the way down to $7 Joe Burrow, and then we had a bunch of 6, 5, 3, whatever. So which of these guys are you? Are you the Allen May Jackson type, or are you the $6 and less type?
I mean, if I'm getting Joe Burrow for $7 and a $200 cap, that's excellent. I mean, that's 3.5% of your budget on a top 4 fantasy QB. I love that. And listen, I don't have that big of a problem with Hurts, and I don't have that. I kind of love Mahomes for $1. Am I seeing that right, or is it a couple more than that?
You're seeing that right.
I mean, that's honestly probably the way I would have gone about it if I were at the King's Classic this year. Is try and get 2 quarterbacks for as cheaply as possible, and if that means $1 or $2 on some of the guys in that range of Mahomes, Goff, Stafford, Purdy. You could even go a little bit further and look at guys like Malik Willis, Jordan Love, Bo Nix, Kyler Murray. I'm reciting rankings here, but you get the point. Yeah. If I'm spending $3 or $4 on 2 quarterbacks, I think that's a good move, but I'm never going to be upset about spending more than that if I'm getting a steal. And getting Joe Burrow for $7 is a bona fide steal.
Yeah, I had $3 on my par sheet when I was at the Kings Classic for a quarterback. I ended up getting May for 6, and that's the kind of spend I'm willing to make. Like, okay, I'm getting a guy that I like for $6 to $8. I'll go ahead and overspend, even though that's not what I plan to do. So I agree with you there. Tight end's a little bit similar this year because I think that after the top couple of guys, it kind of comes down to the same thing we do every year. Are you feeling like you want to be in on Brock Bowers this year? He went for 35 in this one. Surprisingly, McBride hit $30, which I haven't seen a lot of. I've seen a lot of him in the mid to upper 20s. And then we saw Colston Loveland all the way down at 18. How do you feel about those three prices? Is that something that you're chasing? And if not, what's your alternative plan?
Well, the alternative plan is just doing the same thing you do a quarterback and pick up a couple of tight ends.
So you're not in on like Tyler Warren or anything, or Tucker
I would
Kraft?
be. What price are we talking? Listen, the other thing about being worried about getting ripped off is having the opposite mentality, which is I'm going to find a steal. And not many people have that mentality when they go in to buy a car, but some people might think that they're going to go in and find an amazing deal on a car, and they will leave until they get the deal that they think is amazing. And that's the right type of mindset to have, certainly when you buy anything expensive, but also when you go into an auction draft, knowing that there are going to be bargains abound. You just have to be patient enough and hold on to your money long enough to take advantage of them. I kind of like Loveland's value, to be perfectly honest, but if I'm spending 18 on him, and then I'm sorry, Tyler Warren went for how much? I'm looking on the sheet.
Tyler Warren went for 14, and that's what I was going to ask you. How do you feel about that relative?
Like
it feels high, right?
Loveland, I'd rather have Loveland, but it's not that far off the reservation. But I mean,
agreed.
Kraft went for $4.
Yes, that was my whoa moment. $4.
Yep, I like that a lot.
Alrighty, yeah, I agree. So
now listen, it's also super easy for me to sit here and say, "Oh yeah, I'll take Tucker Kraft for $4." But you know what? Heart of hearts, I'd probably pay $6. So and probably, I think I'd definitely pay $6 if it's a $200 budget. So it not only am I singling out players who I think just went for great values, I'm singling them out and saying, even if it were $2 or $3 more, I think I'd still take them on my team.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree. Laporta went for 8, but again, that was a timing issue of when the guys came up. The Kraft for $4 blew me away. I remember on the live stream getting frustrated with that. But of course, I wasn't in the draft, but I was like, come on, people, $4. All right, well, let's shift the focus a little bit because we have some interesting prices on some of these running backs that I haven't seen go this high quite yet. And those are the guys just below the elite players. And I'm talking about Ken Walker, who went for 45, and Ashton Genty, who went for 46. These are prices that are a little bit higher than I'm used to seeing for those particular players. Do you believe in those guys and those prices? Is that fair, or are we reaching a little bit there?
I think 46 for Genty is par. I have him for 23 in my $100 budget.
Yeah, so it's right on. Yeah.
Right. It's a little rich for me on Walker, but those two guys are examples of players that fantasy managers are going to target in any type of format that we talk about. If they're doing their homework before the draft, Drew, then it's going to be more than one somebody. It's probably going to be like 6 or 7 somebodies in every single draft. We'll look at Ashton Genty and say last year was a fluke, and even if it wasn't, he was still pretty good on a per game basis. And they'll say the same thing with Walker. He's in a new situation now. Things are going to be better for him in Kansas City. He's not going to be in this gross split where he's not getting high value touches. He's going to get those touches now and play a lot. And those are going to be the people that fantasy managers are going to gravitate toward. And there's no problem with that, but you have to expect when you're going into an auction that you're not going to get those guys for 17% of your budget. It's going to take 20% of your budget plus to get them because they're going to be popular. And so you're just going to have to decide while you're there just how badly you want them. Hopefully, there will be some other running backs who go before them that you can kind of compare prices to, because you do that when you buy a car too. You want to see how much the Datsun is compared to the Saturn. I didn't want to use a car brand that's still in existence now, and I'm dating myself, but
And the Yugo,
yeah,
the
right.
Yugo, the Datsun.
Yes. So I think it's important. Like if you had seen Omarion Hampton go for 40, and you saw Chase Brown go for 48, well, you probably have a pretty good idea of what those two other running backs, Genty and Kenneth Walker III, will go for.
Yeah. Yeah. And what's interesting to me is that I say all the time that if you're interested in one of those guys, you got to get him out there early and see if it's going to happen. Because, like you said, you're not really getting much of a deal on these guys. So just see what you're going to pay. Because if I'm all in on like, hey, I'm going to get Ken Walker for $39, and then he comes up and he goes for 45, like you have an adjustment to make. That's something you need to find out early.
Sure.
But let me talk to you about the Patriots running backs, because this is fascinating to me in every draft. Travion Henderson went for $15, and then Ramondre Stevenson goes for $7. Now, I don't know what you think about playing the upside game there. Do you feel like I'd rather spend double the money for Travion Henderson just for the hope that he figures it out and he goes nuclear? Or are you thinking, no, Ramondre is the guy? Because, we just heard, was it today or yesterday, Henderson's still struggling in pass pro, and there's a reason he didn't play a lot last year. So what do you think about 15 and 7? What are you doing there?
I think I'm going to different running backs. I think both of those prices are a little bit too high. There's so much uncertainty about how this is going to unfold. But I want to take you back to last year. The hype for Travion Henderson out of training camp in the preseason was crazy. I mean, Drew, you remember the little tour that I went on last year to a bunch of joint training camps.
Mm-hmm.
I saw Travion Henderson look amazing in the Patriots offense. And I walked away from that camp. I had two huge takes walking away from Patriots game. Number one, Drake May is going to have a huge year. Number two, Travion Henderson's going to have a huge year. And I was half right, because Travion Henderson, as good as he looked in practice, the coaching staff didn't want to put too much on his plate. That's what we learned throughout the year. I talked to a former Patriots running back, Damian Harris. You'll remember that name. He works with us now at CBS Sports.
Oh, does he really? I didn't know that.
Oh, and he's fantastic. He's got such great insight on the game and running backs especially. Like, we go to him as an oracle all the time. And he worked with Josh McDaniels in New England. And when I told him about the conundrum we were in with Travion Henderson, he looked at me and he goes, well, did he do the little things right? And I said, I'm not sure, because I don't have the benefit of going back and watching the coaching tape over and over and over again to make sure that he did the little things right. And he goes like this. He goes, if he doesn't do the little things right, there's no way he's going to get a lot of time as long as Ramondre is doing the little things right. So the hype was out of control for him, but not inside the building. And now, this preseason, this training camp, we're getting the reports that he's struggling in pass protection. Not nearly as many glowing reports about him this year as last year, at least not yet. And people are still willing to take him way higher than Ramondre Stevenson. Our host on Fantasy Football Today, Adam Azer, calls Travion Henderson the most mispriced player in fantasy because his ADP is early round 5. And a $15 spend on a $200 budget, that's 7.5% of your budget, right? I'm not screwing that up. I think
that sounds right. Yeah.
That seems a little much.
Mm-hmm.
Not a lot much, but the pathway for Travion to become a thing, it does no longer run through Ramondre Stevenson fumbling, because he did that and it didn't change. He's got to be able to do all the little things better. And just so you know, the track record of second-year running backs under Josh McDaniels, not that great. No, Sean Moreno had a great second year, but he also had a great first year with him.
Oh, I love that name.
I think that, he was so good for fantasy. I love drafting him. I wish he was still playing in New England, because he would put Ramondre Stevenson on the sidelines quick.
Yeah, well, we've got Scott Pianowski waiting in the wings, so I'm going to bring him on here just for a second, and then, Dave, you can hop off whenever you're ready to get out of here. I understand that this is a tough ask this time of the year, but we really appreciate the time. There we go. Welcome, Scott. How you doing, man?
Doing great. How are you guys?
What's up, Scott? How have you been?
Good, Dave. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Yeah, I was just giving Dave the business for not being there in Canton, so I don't know if we're going to see him again next year either. But, I want to ask you, Dave, one more question before I let you go, because there's some wide receivers that I think are real litmus tests in some of these drafts. One of them is Malik Neighbors, who went for $30 the other night, and the other one is Zay Flowers, who went for $26. Oddly, they went to the same guy, but that's not why I'm asking the question.
It's interesting.
Yeah, I do think it's interesting as well. How are we feeling? I feel like these are litmus tests for what people think about fantasy football this year in general, because Neighbors is such an interesting inflection point in a lot of auctions. And then Flowers, people are really pumping him up. But I feel like in auctions, you can still get him in the upper 20s, and that's what happened here. And that tells me that people are still a little bit unsure as well. So are you taking the leap on either one of these guys?
Definitely taking the leap on Neighbors. The fact that we learned that the schedule of his surgeries was incorrectly reported, the fact that he was running routes before training camp even opened, the fact that he knew he wasn't going to start the training camp, the preseason, whatever it is, on the PUP list, that's a big deal to me. And so somebody who had gone through a whole lot of first surgery and then rehab, and now he's recovering and he's out there. And I'm not going to say he looks exactly like his old self, but he looks pretty close based on what you could see in clips. I don't know if that's the end all be all, but beat reporters are saying he looks good. Everybody seems to think he's going to be ready to go week one. I am sure we're going to see more great stuff from Giants camp. In fact, they're doing a joint practice with the Dolphins in late August. I can't wait to see Malik Neighbors practicing against the Dolphins defense. And he should light him up, because that Dolphins defense doesn't look like it's going to be very good this year. But I'm willing to get ahead of it, and I'm willing to take the chance on him right now as a late round 2 pick. And therefore, I hear the price of $30 on a $200 budget. I don't think that's terribly rich. I think that's okay, especially since he's got the potential to be a guy that you would pay, if he were healthy, Drew, you'd be paying north of 40.
Yeah, it'd be in the 40s easily.
No
yeah.
question. Now, Zay Flowers is a different type of cat, because he's never been a big red zone threat for Baltimore. We know what the Ravens want to do in the red zone. And you and Jim got into a great conversation about tight end usage and how that seems to be going up. I think the Ravens are going to do some of that too, but I also think, based on what they told us in the draft, they want bigger wide receivers. And I think they're going to try and win with some of their bigger wide receivers and use those guys out of 11 personnel when the matchups are right. Jacoby Lane has had a great camp. I think Elijah Surratt was a solid receiver from Indiana. I'm not saying that those guys are going to be big-time fantasy factors, just like I'm never going to say that Rashad Bateman is a big-time fantasy factor. Mm-hmm. But if all these little pieces, 2 rookie wide receivers, and Mark Andrews, and of course Derrick Henry working inside the 10, if those are all going to take pieces away of this offense from Zay Flowers, then why should I be expected that things are suddenly going to change for him this year?
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. I think that really he fits really nice as a wide receiver 3, and that's what this team did. So I'm okay with that. Mm-hmm. I don't want to count on him as a central piece, and if he goes off, great. But I don't want to count on him as my 1 or 2, and I feel like a lot of times that's where he's going. So, well, Dave, I'm going to let you get out of here. I'm going to bring in Scott here, and we're going to start the process over here talking about how we make auctions bigger in the business. But Dave, you're one of the ones out there doing the yeoman's work and trying to bring the spotlight to the format. So I appreciate you for that. I don't think it's hard to find Dave, just like it's not hard to find Jim Coventry at Dave Richard on CBS on Twitter. Find him over at CBS. Thank you so much for being here, man. I appreciate you making the time for the panel.
It's been my pleasure, Drew. It's good to see you, Scott. And let's all work together to bring auctions closer to the forefront for fantasy managers.
Heck yeah. Heck yeah. Yeah. Thanks again, Dave. Dave Richard from CBS. Appreciate the time. Scott, you heard the conversation there that we're having at the end about the wide receivers, about the about how we're playing some of these litmus test guys. And I talk about some key players that we come upon. And I was talking about Neighbors and Flowers, but I want to talk a little bit about what happened in this draft when it comes to mid-tier wide receivers. So we're going to get to that in a little bit, the guys that are the mid to low 20s, those type of players, and how we can play that this year. But I want to back up for just a second because I want to reset the whole auction talk. We sit here doing this for the love of the game. I mean, we got a couple hundred people watching us now. This isn't the Super Bowl of fantasy streams, but we do it because we love it. And we get in the room and we feel the juices and we just know that this is what the best way is to draft a fantasy team. How do we convince other people that they should try it? Just give it a try. I think that is the number one barrier, is just moving people off of the start. People have inertia, just like bodies at rest. They want to stay in the space that they're in. How do we push them off of the starting block?
Yeah, I've always said that if I've recommended auctions to 100 people, I don't know anybody's ever come back and said, "Nah, we tried it, we didn't like it." It's the opportunity to have the entire player pool at your disposal. It's a challenge of having to be accountable to everybody in your draft. Okay, if you and I are in a snake draft, Drew, you've got the 2 pick, I've got the 11 pick. We live in different worlds. I'm not getting in your way, you're not getting in my way, and I guess to some degree that might be a little bit comforting. But in an auction, much like at a poker table, and we're always going to make those analogies and those comparisons, you have to know everybody's objective, everybody's mindset, everybody's emotional state, everybody's stack size, and you have to defend against that or work against that. And do you want to, at poker night, do you want to play limit? Do you want to play no limit? Do you want to play chess? Do you want to play checkers? It's a more dynamic game. And what's more deflating than, oh, I'm really high on Bijan Robinson this year. Okay, I got to my draft. I got the 10 pick. I'm not getting Bijan Robinson or Jahmyr Gibbs or Jamar Chase or whatever it is. Some slots are going to require that you ignore a decent part of your sheet. I want the entire player pool available to me. I want the challenge of having to knock heads with anybody in my room, no matter what their slot is. It's just a more dynamic game, a more interesting game. And I've never walked out of an auction, or Yahoo will a lot of times call it a salary cap draft. I've never walked out of one and thought, okay, I crushed that. Everything went the way I wanted it to. And that to me is feature, not bug, because I want the challenge. I want the Pulp Fiction. I want a story told out of order, right? I want just that more dynamic game. And again, nobody's ever come to me and said, "Oh yeah, thanks for recommending it. We tried it, didn't work." And it doesn't take that much more time. You can do them online. You can do them in person. Obviously, we just had a great auction experience at the expo. Matt Kruse running the show, but it gives you more diversity of build. It gives you more options with the player pool, and it gives you more of a challenge against everybody in your room. And if you pride yourself on your fantasy ability, or you think different styles, right? What's boring, like in sports, is when everybody plays the same way, right? Everybody in the NBA is like, okay, we're gonna shoot a bunch of threes. They all play the same way. I want diversity of style and diversity of build, and you get that more commonly in the auction experience.
Yeah, gosh, I've tried a little appeal to people's ego a little bit too, because I say, hey, if you're good at fantasy, you should want to do auctions because it's going to make you, it's going to magnify your skills. So I've tried kind of like, poking at people. I don't know if that works or not, but I'm trying everything because whenever I say it, I've got a buddy who's really into fantasy football and has a home league that I'm in, and we do a snake. And he's like, yeah, come over, we'll hang out, we'll do the draft. And the thing that you said at the beginning that always sticks with me is I'm hanging out with him and we're having a good time drafting, but in no way are we drafting against each other because he's just doing his thing and I'm doing mine. And rarely does, because he was in the 9 hole and I was in the 2 hole, rarely are we ever going to say, oh, what you did just affected me. Now, I talked to JJ Zachariason, and he said that people don't focus enough about the other side of the board and the trends they're seeing in the room. So I understand that. You have to pay attention. But in general, there's not a direct conflict there. And I find that to be just slightly boring. I don't want to crush snake drafts because people love them and I get it, but I just find it slightly boring. Is that a bad opinion?
I don't think so. I mean, I think it was Jeff Erickson who compared snake drafting to auction drafting as no limit, and limit is the snake draft, and no limit is
it's perfect.
The auction draft. And yeah, it is perfect because it's all about the dynamic nature of it. And again, don't you want exposure to the entire player pool, right?
Yeah.
Or builds that you can't make, in an auction, draft, you could come away if you wanted to have Gibbs and Bijan on the same team. You could do it. You could never do that in the snake draft. It is impossible to do that. If you said, you know what, I think the first round is full of landmines. I want to have a bunch of B+ players. I want to have a bunch of round 3, round 4, round 5 guys on the same team. Again, in the snake draft, impossible. In an auction draft, possible.
Yeah.
All I'm asking is people try it, and if you come back, you want to come back to me and say, I didn't care for it for whatever reason. I understand. You don't have to. We all don't have to like the same things, but I think the challenge speaks to why you should try it. I think the diversity of build speaks to why you should try it. I think just the option of having I keep saying the same thing, but having availability for the entire player pool, any of them can be in your roster, because I hate how you get pigeonholed. Your draft slot is just going to lock you out of certain guys, and I want to be in on every player. I want to have a say. I want to theoretically have a say on any player, and you get that in an auction draft.
Yeah, totally agree. And we could just talk about this factor all night, but we as auction guys, salary cap guys, like to talk about it and push forward with it. But I think we do get a little bit of like, yeah, that guy's talking about auctions again. I don't really care that much. And so I don't know how it is. I don't know how we get around that. And Ed, he's a huge supporter of the auction brief, and he makes a great point here. When you like to do the work of fantasy football, when that's fun for you, then you get rewarded for that work when you get in an auction, because your work actually matters. And hey, thank you so much for coming in here. Great content. Keep up the great work. Thank you. I appreciate hearing that, because it is a bit of a grind getting on here for 6 hours over 3 nights and talking, but I love it. And I love doing it because it pushes this format forward. Hopefully, I don't know that I have the platform, that Dave or Scott has, but I'm doing my best to try to push it forward. Let's get into some specifics about auctions here, so that we're not putting people to sleep out there with auction fandom here. And I've got my so I'm pulling up the Superflex draft for you, Scott, because I don't know how many auctions of these that you do. But it might even be better if you don't do Superflex auctions. But I think that you do. We're in, what is the one coming up? Did I see that right? That we have like 4 flex in that draft, plus a Superflex?
Maybe 3 in the Superflex, but something like that.
That's insane. It's crazy. Okay, I love it though.
Yeah, it used to be the Stopa League, and then became the Brad Evans Vegas League. It's a lot of RotoWire guys are in that league, in a really sharp room, a really challenging room.
Looks like
I'm a huge Superflex guy too. The idea that
you are okay, good.
Why should there be really good starting quarterbacks on the waiver wire, right? I mean, why shouldn't? One of the things about fantasy that's always been a little bit weird to me is that NFL all about the quarterback. You don't have a quarterback, can't sleep at night. Fantasy football not really about the quarterback. I think in single start quarterback leagues, you can really just sit back and wait. And I always say it's the New York train system, where you miss a train, there's another train coming in 5 minutes, and it's not that important. Why isn't Josh Allen the first pick? Somebody who's new to fantasy be like, oh yeah, should I take Josh Allen first overall? Isn't he the best player in football, or the MVP guy, or whatever like that? It doesn't work like that. But in Superflex, it changes the calculus. Again, I want more interesting setups. I want more dynamic builds. So it speaks to me. And I'm used to it anyway, because when I first started playing fantasy, I played in a 2 quarterback format. I didn't know any difference. I didn't know that there could be leagues with 1 quarterback. That's what we did. But I'm a huge Superflex guy. I think it's the best format.
Okay. Well, I just learned something new about you. And just like I learned that you're a big Swingers fan, and we exchanged quotes all weekend in Canton. I didn't know that. So this is what's great about having Scott on. I think we share a brain. But let me talk to you about some of the quarterback prices, because I was a little bit surprised at what happened. And I want to take it top down, because I have questions at every level here. Okay, at the top level, we had Josh Allen went for 44. He was the top guy, which makes a ton of sense. Lamar Jackson right behind him at 39. And then Drake May went for 39 as well. There was a big gap there after those 3 guys. I think that's fairly straightforward. Although I will say Burrow went for 37. but it dropped off significantly after that with some $35 and $31 guys. But talk to me about the top of the pool there with $44 and $39 for those top three guys. Is that something that you ever do, or do you just kind of play it by ear? Because it feels like those prices are a little bit lower than I typically see in a super flex for those caliber of quarterbacks, but also I don't ever really pay $45 for a quarterback in a super flex because I'm trying to get three of them. So how do you play it?
Yeah, I'm trying to get three of them too, and my first quarterback is usually somebody in that 6 to 12 tier who I can tell myself a story. It can be a top 5 quarterback. So it could be a lot of Caleb Williams, a lot of Trevor Lawrence, a lot of Justin Herbert, guys like that. Brock Purdy was somebody who I was targeting. I'm a little bit nervous. It seems like a different 49er gets hurt every day. So I'm kind of rethinking my position on Purdy, but I do like him very much in the Shanahan offense. So I'm generally going to shop in that B+ tier for my top quarterback. And like you, I prefer to have three if I can get one. I get a setup that way. Also, in leagues that allow trading, having that extra quarterback is always going to be a trade piece. And it's going to be especially valuable during the bye week season. But that's generally my preference. But you also have to be flexible in whether you're in a snake draft or an auction draft. All of your strategies are written in pencil, and you have to be ready to pivot to things that come up. And I guess caught the tail end of your conversation with Dave. You made a great point that you have to throw out players you're interested in. I used to fall. One of my leaks as a auction player, and I've tried to fix this, is that, okay, there's a couple of players I'm really excited about, I'm targeting. I don't want to mention them. I want people to have less resources when they come up, and I'll get the price I want and everything. And a lot of times I'd wait too long to find out about a player, and then the timing would be messed up by the time that player ended up coming out. I have to be a little bit more proactive of finding out. And if I had a certain player targeted for, a certain amount and he goes $5 or $10 over that, well, I was never getting him anyway. Somebody else had the same opinion on the player, maybe stronger than I did, or the need that they had at that time was stronger than my need, whatever it was. You have to find out what you want to avoid. One of the biggest keys of any auction draft is you can't wait until it's the last good time in a tier. You can't wait. And you have to get your players while your opponents have alternatives. And if you wait until there's a moment in the Expo auction where a lot of us needed receivers, Mike Evans was the screaming best player left in a tier, and the bidding was basically it was a panic bidding over the last loaf of bread right in front of a snowstorm. It was just awful. And you have to get in while there are alternatives for your opponents so they can get out, so they can say, okay, if I don't get this player, I'll get somebody else. But I need to be more proactive about. I used to always be so, I don't want to mention anybody I like. I don't want to nominate players I want. I need to be more flexible and kind of shake that up a little bit, because I think I've gotten a little bit too set in a strategy that has holes in it.
Yeah. Well, hey, and that's what I love about the craft too, is that you really learn something every time you do it, and you refine your game every time you do it. And so let's talk about those quarterbacks that come in behind the top guys, because I thought there was a really odd spike on a couple of guys. I know Ed Heath wasn't excited about his price for Burrow at 37, and then Herbert went for 35, and Daniels for 31, and then we go all the way down to $26 for Jalen Hurts. Now that feels like an odd spread. Is that a little bit weird pricing there for you?
Well, my first thought is, if Burrow went for that much, what did Dak Prescott go for? Because I want somebody to tell me why is Joe Burrow so much better than Dak Prescott? What's the difference with those guys? They're both working with a dynamic receiver room. They're both working with a defense that's probably going to be below average. They're both set up to play 30 to 27 football more often than not. And even Prescott, you don't have to worry about the elements as well. He's in Dallas, so I guess they occasionally get snow. Leon Lett remembers, but I don't see the difference there. Hurts, I don't know what to do with Hurts. I'll be honest with you on that. I mean, it's a transition year for the Eagles. They're going to blame everything on the old OC. They're going to blame everything on A.J. Brown. But Hurts saw his rushing and tush-push touchdowns drop last year. And if we don't assume 10-plus rushing touchdowns with Hurts, I'm not sure how I feel about him. He's got a new coat of paint with that wide receiver room. Obviously, Devonta Smith is still there. but it's going to take some time to build chemistry with a lot of the new players he's dealing with. He's a yellow light player for me, not green light, not proactive, not go get him, not elbow people out of the way and go the extra buck. I'm not necessarily dead set against Hurts. It's more of a market play for me, but I really like Dak. I think Dak is the arbitrage Joe Burrow. And even if you want to go a little bit lower with some of the pocket quarterbacks, whether it's Stafford, whether it's Goff, whether it's Jordan Love, all those guys are, I think, quasi-disrespected. In the Expo auction, I did not love my team, but I did really like getting Goff and Love for $1 each. Goff is boring. I get it. But he's not his true talent level. He's not never going to be the face of the NFL or an MVP candidate or whatever, but you can set your watch by 30-plus touchdowns, 4,000-plus yards, a heavy schedule of indoor games. They have a very high implied total for the season. They have what looks like a pretty manageable schedule, a lot of pieces around him that we like. Amon-Ra St. Brown, who I think you could take over JSN if you wanted to. That, to me, is an inflection point in the middle of the first round. Goff and Love, I think, are highly disrespected, especially in leagues where multiple quarterbacks are required.
Yeah, and they're just the prices at the back of the draft were just super odd for me because of the fact that quarterbacks are so scarce. And I think some of these teams are planning on maybe not starting a quarterback in the Superflex. But we've got...
You don't want to do that, by the way. Ever.
Well,
I mean, the good thing with
agree.
Superflex is that if you're screwed like during an injury week or during a bye week, that you can get away with it. You don't want to do that more than like once a season. I'd prefer to never do it at all.
Yeah. Well, I'm with you on that. So I think what the question I put on the bottom of the screen here is from a big supporter of mine. His name is Chad, and Chad's asking, how you feel about the late round quarterback strategy in a Superflex. And I don't know if this draft board is the best representation of what we're going to see in a Superflex, because we've got Malik Willis for $4. We've got Daniel Jones for $6, Geno Smith for $2, even guys like Darnold for $3, Kyler Murray for $9, CJ Stroud for $11. I feel like those are all really low prices, and people just didn't care about those guys. But the scarcity at quarterback should have pushed those prices a little bit higher. Am I on an island here?
Those sound like one quarterback prices.
I agree.
Those don't make a lot of sense to me. The only guy you mentioned at his price where I would have maybe shied away is Stroud at 11, but everybody else you mentioned I thought was a good value at that number.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I thought that, we've got one of the guys in the chat from the draft last night, and I'll put his comment back up here. But he said, the vibe, the dynamic in the room for quarterbacks was strange. And I agree, because if I'm sitting in that room, I don't care if I have 4 quarterbacks already and Malik Willis stops at $4, I'm saying 5. Like, there's just no way I'm letting that happen, even if it means that I end up with a 4th or 5th quarterback. I'm not letting that happen. So I thought that there was, I don't know, maybe a little bit of nerves here being on the live stream or something, because I think people were too conservative at the quarterback spot. But okay, we're going to bring in somebody here in just a few minutes. Scott, you got time to hang around tonight?
Sure.
Okay, excellent. So thank you for being here, and I'm going to let you, get out your socials and your work and stuff here. But I'm going to bring in, we might just get rid of this draft board here in a second, and I'm going to bring in Doug Orth and Matt Kruse. We all were in the Kings Classic Brown room together, so I think that'll be a fun conversation. But before I get there, I want to ask you about the Superflex strategy at the other positions, because one of the things I always harp on is that at the beginning of a salary cap draft, everybody's going to nominate the top guys. That's just how it goes. I looked in the Kings Classic, and the first 28 nominations, first 2 rounds, I believe that only 2 of them were outside starter level guys. So you can count on your league mates to nominate those top guys. But in this draft, they shied away from the quarterbacks a little bit. And I think in home leagues, people are more excited about quarterback in a Superflex, but it creates opportunity at other positions. So what kind of discount are you wanting to see at the top level here? We got Bijan for $50 and Gibbs for $52, which is a far cry from the $70 they went for in the 1 QB auction the night before. So what kind of discount do you want to see at the top for you to even think about it? Or are you still of the opinion that I'm not doing that anyway, despite the discount?
Those sound like really interesting prices for me.
They are, right?
And
They're
that's what
tempting.
you're doing in the early part of a salary cap draft, auction draft. You're calibrating the market, right? You're trying to, and that's a good idea of, in addition to, okay, the best players I don't want, a lot of your early nominations should be what players do I want to find out about? What players will define the market for other players who are similar, other players who are a tier below? You want to get those players out there and get information. It's all about trying to get information and trying to get people to tip their hand, their roster strategy, their feeling on a position, their feeling on a tier, whatever it is. You're trying to get those things, those trends developing, knowing that a lot of it will change as the money dynamic changes, but still you want to get that information out there. And when I don't know if Gibbs or Bijan came out first, but when the price ended at what I thought was a reasonable number, I would have immediately thought I might be in on the other guy. I might think I might, and I want to have strong running back rooms this year. It doesn't necessarily mean I have to have Gibbs or Robinson, but when one of them stopped at that 50 to 52 range, I think, okay, if that's what the market's going to be, and sometimes it doesn't work that way. You could, and I think again, this is feature, not bug. You could be in an auction where Gibbs goes for $10 more than Robinson for whatever, any number of reasons, timing, or somebody went to the bathroom or whatever it is. But I want to have running back rooms I feel good about. And when we talk about when people are in more experienced rooms, a lot of times you see this in expert leagues, because the first times people do an auction for the first time, you get 12 people that have never done it. Okay, Drew, you sold me. I'm going to do the auction draft. Usually the spending in those leagues is the freshman year credit card leagues, where people don't save their money, and the spending is crazy early, and then a bunch of people halfway through look like they ate too much pizza or they drank too much beer, whatever it is, and then they feel depressed when they watch all these incredible values go off the board. But then there's like a stage 2 or stage 3 where people are used to that idea. You want to hold back a little bit, and sometimes the best opportunities to buy are in those first couple of rounds, even like the first player or two. People haven't gotten comfortable yet. They're not really sure what they're up against. They want to get more informed, more information out there and make a more informed choice before they step into the market. And then they all look around and be like, wait a minute, that was all Robinson went for. It's all Jamar Chase went for. That doesn't make any sense. That's all Puka went for. So if you're in a room with some experience in it, a lot of times those great times to buy are early. In this case, Gibbs and Robinson I thought were very affordable and make for reasonable buys early in an auction.
Yeah, those prices are tempting. It'd be one of those things where I'd be sitting there going, oh boy, I didn't expect to spend this, but I might have to throw a bid in here because I really enjoyed, I really like seeing the difference here. But then we had some guys that went for prices that were kind of like the one QB prices. So there was an interesting back and forth there. Like we had some $40 running backs that were 40 the previous night. So we brought onto the stage a guy who knows a lot about auctions, Mr. Matthew Kruse here. He's on Twitter at Draft Auctioneer. There's a number on the end, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, that's it for Twitter.
Okay.
And my website's draftauctioneer.com.
Okay, draftauctioneer.com. And yeah, Matt is actually a real life auctioneer, and he actually was the one who handled the Kings Classic Brown auction room for us at the expo I guess it's been about 10 days ago now. And, Scott and I were both in the room, and we're going to bring in Doug Orth here in a few minutes because all of us were in the same room. I think it'd be a fun discussion to have. Matt, give me your overall impression. I know that you know auctions and you listen to the show a lot, and I thought that the room was tough, and I'm not saying that I thought it wouldn't be because these guys are all smart and good fantasy guys. I expected a little bit more, maybe just kind of maybe impulsiveness at points where maybe somebody would spend when they shouldn't be spending, but I don't felt like that happened much at all. What was your impression of it, Matt?
I think it was a pretty predictable room, I guess is what I would call it. There weren't a lot of surprises. So, and the way the nominations went was pretty much the top guys. And so when you can mix in, lower tier guys, that can work good and bad for you. Sometimes you can slip a guy through, and then sometimes they sell for more than they should because everybody has a bunch of money. And so, but this one went pretty predictably, and something there wasn't a lot of, and we talked about this, I think, afterwards a little bit with Scott, where we didn't think that too many people were willing to go head to head very far with each
Yeah.
other. There wasn't like a huge competition for players. Like when it got to a certain number, people were willing to move on and not bid anymore. And that can be good or bad. We have a thing in real auctions. One of my auctioneer friends does this as an auction house, where if you couldn't be there and you can't be online, you can leave an absentee bid. And one of the things that he has on his form is you can do what they call a +1. So if you're going back and forth, through the different increments, and, like if you left $100 bid and then, it sells for $110, you feel bad for that person that left the bid. So sometimes we literally do this in real auctions. You could bid one more. And that way you don't lose out. Or if you're on the wrong foot as the auctioneer, which is a skill that you have to do, is you have to make sure you end up on the absentee bid at 100 and don't take it from a live person at 100, because then they get mad that, well, I left you the 100 and you didn't take it. So I think for our purposes in fantasy, I have a 10% rule. So if you budget something, if you budget $50 for Bijan or Gibbs, is it going to ruin your auction if you go 55? Probably not. That's even more true the lower you go, because if it's $10, then yeah, you can bid 11, but you probably shouldn't bid 12. And that's kind of just a rule of thumb that we use in real auctions.
I love that.
Let me step in on this.
Yeah.
That's such a great point by Matt. If you are going to quote unquote overpay for something in an auction, be it for something you really believe in or somebody that you really want, really need at the time, and you're going to get values at some point. You're going to get players a lot cheaper than you expected at some point in the auction. You just don't know often when that is. You're not going to hate yourself if you thought Bijan was a $55 player and you got him for 58. That's not a big deal. You got a player you believe in. You got a fundamental piece, and now maybe there are players you can nominate that don't make sense for your build anymore. You'll get some money off the table anyway. I love that 10% rule. That's something I needed to, as I gained more auction experience, be more comfortable with that. I had a price in mind. I'm not somebody who comes in with hard pricing, but I know some people who are like that, saying, okay, I got my number here. I'm not going over it. I believe in the calibrations I've done. It's okay to color outside the lines a little bit. I also thought Matt made a great point of that our auction at the expo was very linear. The nomination style was linear, and there wasn't a lot of combativeness or a lot of back and forth with some of the bidding. And one of the more auctions are usually just crazy stories. I always say the Pulp Fiction stories told out of order. This was actually a story that actually had a little bit of order to it. And I regret not shaking it up a little bit and finding out about, okay, what players do I have in mind for who could be $10 players, $5 players? Who's a player I like at $1, but I wouldn't want to go past that? Why not throw that guy out for $1? If I get him for $1, great. If I don't get him for $1, well, I was never going to get him for $1 probably anyway. I'm not going to just hope that the end game works out in my favor for that player. I probably should have shaken that up a little bit, because that room maybe needed a little bit of shaking up at times, but that story was unusually linear. But if you take nothing from this conversation, really take the 10% rule that Matt outlined, I think is a great rule of thumb when you're getting used to this exercise.
Yeah, that's something that I don't think I've heard you say that before, Matt, but I love it. And I blew my 10% out of the water because I had 32 for my top wide receiver, and I went to 49 on St. Brown because I just was going to be mad at myself if I stared at that $48 for the next 3 hours. And I loved having St. Brown, but it definitely threw a curve in my entire draft, and I think I recovered okay. It wasn't amazing. I felt uninspired, but I think that what popped into my head when you were talking there, Scott, was that when I sit down at a poker table, for the most part, now sometimes I have my moments when things go poorly and I'm a bit grouchy or I'm tired or whatever. But 98% of the time, I want to be people's friend at the poker table, because then they don't want to play back at you. And was there some of that going on in that auction room? because I feel like we're all having a blast. JJ's, F and, F you, and Harmon's over here making cracks, and Doherty's cracking people up. And Matt, our auctioneer, he's cracking up the room too. And then we're listening to Drake talk about us over here. We're laughing about that. So is there a little bit of that maybe? I mean, I don't know. That just popped into my head.
There was a friendly vibe to the room, and there wasn't. I didn't get any antagonistic nature, which occasionally shows up in an auction draft when you want a player and you're wondering whether that one person who's bidding against you won't leave you alone. In fact, Jeff Ratcliffe needed to leave early, and Jaden Higgins came up, a player who I probably needed pretty badly when he came up, but Jeff needed to get in a cab in like 7 minutes. I did oppose him on Higgins, but at one point I just backed off when I probably could have gone $3 or $4 more because I just wanted to be a decent person and let him get on the car. So look, maybe Jaden Higgins isn't going to be an impact player this year. It's not like I wasn't trying, or I was just, letting him have a player completely without contest, because I did make a few bids on it, but there was a friendly, I don't know, just there's that vibe that you described. There wasn't any antagonism in this room at all. And I'm not saying that's good or bad. It's just kind of the style that we had that afternoon.
Yeah. I mean, it was a lot of fun. I'll say that. It was a ton of fun. And a guy that I had a lot of fun with in the room, and, dating back to 2019 when I sat next to Doug in the Kings Classic, I've had a lot of laughs with Doug in the draft room, and I got seated next to him again this year. I'm not sure that it benefited me to be between these two jokers. Let me see if I can point to them on the stream here. I had these two guys next, directly right and left, and then I got this guy down here, the expert auctioneer. I tell you, I had a blast. I also feel like I just was uninspiring in the room. But Doug, thank you so much for being here. Let me get your introduction in here, and we'll start talking ball here. But Doug, remind everybody where they can find you and where your work is now.
Yeah, as of last summer, but full-time for the first time this year. Everything that I do is now at the Huddle. That comes after about almost 20 years at FF Today. But we can talk about this later, but my big boards and whatnot will be coming out later this week. Just as a promo for.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, man. And, I appreciate you being here. And Doug has always, like I said, we have talked a lot about auctions over the years, and we've done shows together about the auction stuff. And when I think about a panel, I think about bringing Doug on, and I think this dynamic here is wonderful. I don't know how I'm going to navigate it here between the three of you, because everybody's got something that they want to contribute here, and it's all valuable. But Doug, let me get your take off the top, because I was talking with Matt and Scott about the fact that it was just it was a fun room. It was a good vibe, but there didn't seem to be a lot of like irritation, like, hey, this guy bid against me again. People weren't kind of taking it personal. And then at Scott's point, it evolved very linear, that we were just, and Matt made the point off the top too, that there just wasn't a lot of surprises. Did you feel the same way?
Very much so. And I can tell you the two guys here, Matthew excluded obviously, but the two other guys here on the panel, you guys are the ones I battle with year in, year out, as far as trying to get values, or it seems like I'm always, if I think I'm going to get somebody for 18, I better figure on 20, because I'm going to be going up against Drew or Scott for those guys. But it didn't ever seem like we got into those drawn out bid battles.
I felt the same way. I felt like it just didn't happen that way. And Matt, let me ask you, because you do a lot of this stuff, and just from a human observation standpoint, did you notice anything that stood out with the guys in the room and how they handled themselves with the bidding? Because I know there was quite a few times where you're looking at somebody like, you're not telling me what you're doing. Like, give me some sign about what you're doing. Do you deal with that in regular auctions, or is that just kind of like a newbie type thing that we don't know what we're doing?
No, because you talk about trying to make auctions a format that fantasy people should use, which obviously I'm all for, and that's why I exist and have the website, is just literally to get more people to do it. But we have that in real life too, because we say maybe we sell 5% of things that could be sold at auction. It's probably really more like 1 or 2%. And so our goal in life is to try to get everybody to do things more at auction. And so when that comes into play, we're dealing with people that aren't used to auctions all the time. I mean, that's a battle that we have in real life because people aren't comfortable doing it. Now, like I'm from the Midwest and we sell real estate at auction. And if you're not selling land at auction, you're probably doing it wrong because it'll bring you the most money by far. But in other places, that's not the case because people are, why are you having an auction? Is it a distressed situation where you have to do it? And so people just aren't comfortable doing it. And so that's the one thing I would tell everybody, go to a real auction, get a bidder's number and bid on some stuff. I mean, it doesn't have to be high dollar stuff. You don't have to go to, a high end art auction, with $1 million stuff. Just go to a local auction and get comfortable doing it. Because I think in this room at the King's Classic, I think there's 3 levels of kind of friendship. So you have acquaintances where you're not that friendly with the other person, and so you don't have a problem bidding against them. And then you get into this next level where it's a little more casual friends, and so you want to be nice and have people like you. And then you get to the really good close friends, and then you don't care anymore again, and you'll bid against them because you want to beat them. And I think at the King's Classic, we're kind of in that middle group where we don't want to offend the other bidders too much, and so we don't want to bid against them. And so that's why, like especially this year, I think this was probably the first year where I'd say that it was more linear, no surprises, pretty predictable auction compared to some of the ones we've had in the past.
Yeah, that's a great point about that being in that middle zone there. So, Doug, let me come back to you because I know what Scott thinks about his draft, and he's already taken a hit with Ricky Pearsall. Frankly, I feel awful about that because he could have been a good contributor for you. And Doug, what did you feel like didn't work for you in the room, or how overall did you feel about the results? And then, follow it up with, hey, maybe I didn't do this or that very well.
Well, I'll tell you about the only thing I come away, and I can't really be mad at myself, but I certainly didn't expect to spend $16 on Lamar Jackson because I was like probably half the room where I was going to go budget quarterback, try to spend no more than $5, hopefully, preferably like 3 or 4, but. At the same time, though, I think Declan Doyle's a great fit. Him and Lamar Jackson's a great marriage. But then counterbalance with, I think, didn't you get Drake May for 6?
I did. I did.
So I know you can't look at it like $10 cheaper or 2.5 you spent, but basically I spent 2.5 times more on Lamar Jackson, but that's sometimes how you have to look at it.
Yeah.
As far as everything else, I got to tell you, I mean, the depth in 14 team leagues, especially ones with the sharp rooms that we have, is Jim Coventry had depth last year, but that's a 1 to 2%.
That's an outlier. Yeah. It's tough.
So remember that in 8 to 10 manager leagues, you'll love your team. 12 team league, you'll talk yourself into your team.
Yep.
14 teamer, you're gonna dislike your team in some way. It's just unavoidable.
Yeah, and so ultimately, what I ended up doing with my bench, if there's one sore subject with my team, it's my bench. But ultimately, what I ended up doing is try to stash all the high end handcuff running backs I could, and because those will be the I don't want to say the deal breakers, but those guys will be the wild cards that either, if none of them hit, then they're all 2% guys, 2% chance of hitting. But if one of them does hit, then that shit takes my team from maybe middle of the pack to top of the heap, perhaps.
Guys, that's a 3-flex league. Do you think it's more important to angle towards receivers or running backs, or just how the market goes? I'll play it by ear as far as how you're going to fill your flexes.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was I wanted to focus a little bit more on running back flexes this year, just because the wide receiver 2 and 3 scoring is down, and I feel like the price doesn't go down as much at wide receiver. And I talked about that with Jim, about the fact that the prices at wide receiver, instead of like going like this for a while and then dropping off a cliff, they just kind of went like this the whole time, and we never really got that deal that we thought we might get. Right, Doug?
Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah.
I think
Scott-
pretty much across the board.
Yeah. Yeah. It was odd. Not odd, but it was, I think it shows discipline. I think, it's a disciplined group. We all know we have to draw that money out to fill all those spots. But I think then therein lies the opportunity. I mean, Scott, you took the opportunity to go running back because of that. And I think you're 7 deep at running back or something, or 6 deep.
Yeah, I really do like my running back depth. Now, unfortunately, I always felt out of that auction that I was maybe a receiver down, and then I lose Pearsall. So now I'm in a dire situation at receiver. I hope
We should talk.
Well, let's do that. I also joked to you in text, I think, Drew. I said, I hope I'm not drawing dead before the season starts. But
Right.
I was willing to lean into that running back and be okay with a roster that wasn't as balanced as maybe I'd like it to be. I had an idea. Again, this is the whole idea that you're going into an auction or even a snake draft with a strategy, but it's in pencil and you're going to go where opportunities present themselves. And I felt that's the one thing I do like about my team. And I got a lot of guys who I think are decent players in that $7 to $10 range.
Yeah. Yeah, you did. And we might have to talk here because apparently Kyle Monongai's dead. I don't know what the heck's going on there. And then I got him as insurance because I have J.K. Dobbins as my RB3, and who the hell wants that as your RB3? So I got some insurance, and he's already done. So, we might have a mutually beneficial situation here, but I don't know that I've got a great wide receiver room either. So it's a tough draft. But so I want to go back to talking about in this deep of a format, there's a definite stratification. So we talked about how the wide receivers just went really flat like this.
Yeah.
But then you get to a point where you realize there's just not enough money in the room. That's hard to handle. And so there is a point where you can wait a little bit too long. But then you want to be there when there's those. I mean, Scott, you scooped up all those guys, like you said, from $4, $5, $6 up to 10. And in this type of a format, that feels like the play. But sometimes when I've made that play, I haven't felt good about the result because I made some poor decisions with some of those guys. Does that raise the difficulty level having to hit on a bunch of $5, $6, $7 guys, Scott?
Oh, for
or
sure.
Doug? Yeah, either one.
A lot of people would look at those running backs and say, hey, these are dead zone running backs, right? I mean, the idea that maybe your hit rate isn't as solid in those positions. I also wanted to have players where I could tell myself a story that they could be twice as valuable next year. I hope Pearsall was going to be one of those guys, but could Blake Corum be like a 3rd or 4th round pick next year? That type of thing. Could Jordan Mason be a player who rises in draft value? You want to tell yourself, again, this is just another way of saying you want players who have upside. You don't, although in a league where we start this many players, I a lot of times I jokingly call those Mohamed Sanu leagues, and I'm not sure if that reference even matters to anybody anymore. Who's Mohamed Sanu?
We're all old enough for that.
I like leagues where somebody who goes 8-25-5 or 8-25-6 actually has value. And in a 14-team multiple flex league, those guys do have value. The big joke with you and I, Drew, is that last year we got into the bidding war over Wan'Dale Robinson. This year, I was playing a little bit nicer. We kind of wrestled for Wan'Dale, but I backed off probably a few dollars short of maybe where you wanted to go, or maybe my roster would be better if I had Wan'Dale Robinson on it. Mm-hmm. But Wan'Dale Robinson is the stand-in. He's maybe a little bit better than Mohamed Sanu ever was because Wan'Dale can catch 90 to 100 passes. We never said that about Sanu, but I like leagues where Wan'Dale Robinson is actually a coveted piece.
Yeah. Doug, what was your build? I know I remember the $16 for Jackson. I remember a couple of your guys. I don't have your roster in front of me. I'm a bad host. But tell me a little bit about what you did overall, but also those guys in that 7, 10, whatever dollar range. Do you have a lot of those guys on your team?
No, I'll tell you. So what I try to, I don't know, I do it consciously. At least in snakes, I do it consciously. I try to have as balanced of a team as possible, starting from, throughout the bench. But to answer your question, so my team was Lamar Jackson for 16, like I said before. Marion Hampton, I believe, was for 45. I want to say Javonte Williams is 21. Then I had a bunch of, I won't say budget receivers, but teen receivers. I think I had Parker Washington, Chris Godwin in the $14 to $16 range. McLaurin was my wide receiver 1 for 32, which I understand some people might have thought he was an overspend. I had him
Parker Washington would go for 18 to 20 if we did it today, I bet.
Yeah. I had McLaurin priced higher than 32. So, but I don't remember if that was the one I got Josh Downs into, but I think I remember having 5 receivers that
I love that room. Downs is another guy who I think is gaining steam, and justifiably so.
And so, and then the one that you talk about pivot points, and Drew, you talk about like points where you can tell the draft's turning. Mine was when I got Tucker Kraft for $9. That was, and I heard you say he went for 4 in one of your recent auctions. Or was it the Sunday one?
Yeah, it was the 1 QB. No, wait, no. I'm sorry, it was last night. It was last night in the Superflex.
Because I was expecting 15, 16, and so when that broke, then I felt a lot better about Lamar Jackson, and I felt like, I felt much better about my potential starting lineup, and then
well, I have Dalton Schultz. He's just as good.
But to kind of answer your question, I don't believe in stars and scrubs, but especially when we get into 14-team leagues like the Kings Classic, I won't say I sacrifice my bench, but I've become accustomed to just settling for $1 guys on my bench, and I'll do my best on the waiver wire, which is virtually non-existent. With that said, I was able to get Harold Fannin in both leagues last year, so that made a huge difference in finishing where I did in both leagues. 2
things I want to piggyback on what Doug just said. One, you talked about not being sure if he paid too much for Jackson, but the savings he got on Kraft, all of a sudden you feel good again. It's never a big deal if you spend a few extra bucks on a player you believe in or an elite talent, because you're probably going to make it up elsewhere. So I just want to underscore that point again. As far as single dollar players go, one of my strategies, and this may be a leak, I don't know, is that I like to have some control over who I get for my final few roster spots. So I try to avoid the $1 players, because once you get down to $1 guys, what happens is you have the burden of the nomination. You put out a crummy player, you're probably stuck with them. You put out a good player, you're probably going to get trampled by the people who have leverage. I cannot stand being in that position. And yet the hit rate on even the $2, $3 players is probably low enough that I need to reconsider that. Am I really getting a better 4 or 5 guys at the bottom of my roster because I spent $2 or $3 on them when everybody else had to go to single dollars? Is that return worth it year over year? I need to analyze that a little bit. I just hate to be out of leverage. I hate to be in the position where, again, it's that burden where, who is the player I can get for $1? Who can I find? And then you save the $1, he goes for 2, and now you can't say anything for 15 or 20 minutes. That drives me crazy. I hate to be in that position. I do think if you're in a startup auction league, I would recommend that you save a slush fund for the end game and understand the key numbers, right? That was part of the Wan'Dale Robinson conversation last year, where Drew and I could both go to 11. So me getting to 11 first was a key number. A lot of times just being ready for the quick 2 or the quick 3, because multiple people have that bid, but nothing past that. It's the first person who gets it out there who's going to win that player. So it's important to know where those spots are. But I've shied away from the $1 players, and I wonder if maybe I've gone too far with that.
Yeah. And here's my frank take on that is I kind of suck at it. So if I'm going for some $1 guys, I'm generally just bad at it. And maybe it's just because the hit rate's so low, so I have some sort of anecdotal bias there because I'm not good at it. But Matt, I want to swing back to you for just a second, because there was a couple moments in the draft, and I think the first player off the board was Kyron Williams, and he went for $25 or $26. And you kind of like gave me a side eye, like, is this guy going to bid? Because he knows I'm a Kyron guy. But then later in the draft, we saw Josh Jacobs too cheap as well. And again, Matt, you were kind of looking at me like, is there going to be a bid in the corner over here? So, Matt, let me just first of all say, if you listen to my show, I'm sure that's partially where you're getting it. But I know that you called me out on a tell I had last year, which was entering numbers into the Draft Dominator. You could tell that I was done being interested in that player because I went to my keyboard, which was a dumb mistake for a guy that's been doing this as long as I have. So Matt pulled that, or maybe somebody who was listening told Matt, and he told me. But was I that easy to read, first of all, on Jacobs and Kyron? But more a general question for people who are actually listening. Did you see some things from some people as you're up there? Do you pick those things up? And are they just kind of like, is that second nature now that you're picking that up? Or are you paying attention? Because I don't want to insult you here because you're a professional. And somebody mentioned these lines that you were giving us. Those don't happen by accident. You got to prepare that stuff, right?
I mean, I've grown up in that. So
Okay.
my, uncles and grandpa and dad and brothers and cousins were all auctioneers. And so, I mean, I've been to thousands of auctions and we've used thousands of lines, and some of them are appropriate and some of them are not. And so I'm used to doing that kind of stuff. And sure, there's a few things that get a little more tailored to a fantasy football auction. But, when it's interesting because, and I don't want to downplay anybody's experience, but, I heard someone on Sirius XM on the fantasy channel was like, oh, I've done 80 auctions. I'm an expert. And that may be true. But I mean, I've done that many in half a year. And so, I mean, I kind of understand. And as an auctioneer, I mean, if you bid, I mean, my responsibility is to come back and ask you if you want to bid again one more time before I sell it. And it's funny listening to your show because you're like, oh, Matt takes forever. But I guarantee you that
I knew you'd hear it. Believe me, when I was saying it, I'm like, me and Matt are going to have a conversation here.
Because I'm still selling it quicker than you would do it on a sleeper countdown clock. Okay. And it may not seem like that when it's live, but it is. I mean, I'm still going quicker because I'm only asking the two.
That's great context. I like hearing this.
So that have bid. Like I'm checking, like, do you want to bid one more time? Do you want to bid one more time? If not, I'm going to sell it to the high bidder. Whereas, in sleeper, I mean, the countdown clock is 10 seconds or whatever it is. I mean, and that doesn't change. And so, I mean, I can go quicker. Now, when you're the high bidder, you get upset with me because you're like, will you hurry up and sell it? Because I want to buy it for this price. But when you're the person that's just been outbid, I mean, you want that little bit of extra time. And so, and again, because a lot of the people in the room are not auction experts. I mean, we had one younger guy that was there, and it's like, I need to get some sort of feedback from you because I don't want to sell it away from you, but I'm gonna. And so then he started nodding, but then I thought he was bidding and he wasn't. And so
I remember
there's a fine line there, but you can sort of tell. I mean, and again, on those players, I mean, in theory, I know that you like them. And in theory, I think they were decent buys because I think your corner of the room, and I would be in this group in my auctions, is we typically shy away from the high price guys in a tier. So maybe we're not going to pay for Gibbs or Bijan or Jamar Chase, but we still know that we need first round, second round players. And so we want to get one of the cheaper top tier or second tier guys. I mean, can you win an auction draft buying 3 tier 2 people? I think so. But it's kind of nice to have a first round pick on your team and you feel better about it. Now, I did let Matt Harmon, who literally has done 3 live auctions to my knowledge, based on what he's told me the last 3 years of the Kings Classic. And he's like, I think he was on your show, Drew. He's like, well, what I love about this is you can get 3 first round players on your draft. And so in my home league, I was like, you know what? I might try that. And I did. And I hated my team because the rest of my team was horrible. Yeah. And so, and I picked one wrong player in Brian Thomas Jr. as one of my 3 guys, which is never going to end well. So, it's just can I tell? Sure. I mean, do you always know? Not always. I mean, I try to, when I'm bidding, my brother does our home league auction. And I mean, I'm just, tapping the side of my face to let him know that I want to bid. And I don't even have to do that most of the time. I can just look at him and he knows if I'm looking at him that I'm thinking about it. And so, because in our league, it's not that I'm that much better than everybody else, although I have won more titles than everybody else. But when I bid, then other people feel obligated to bid against me. And you talk about the end game. and I don't know if there's any way to win the end game. Like you can't buy all the good guys at the end. It's not possible. You don't have enough roster spots and you don't have enough money. And so you wait and you think, all right, it's time to sneak this guy in. And the guy that's got the $10 is just boom on it. And you were never going to get him. And you're like, well, if I would have waited one more time, but somebody else would have nominated him and you wouldn't have enough money. And that's just the way that it goes. So the end is never going to be perfect most of the time. Unless, and this you could do, is if you fill your roster early, and that way might actually be better sometimes.
Yeah.
Don't you love nonverbal behavior? There's a great scene in the movie Sideways where there's two couples out at dinner, and at one point, one of the women looks at the other woman with a look like, let's go to the bathroom and reevaluate where this night is going, but it's all nonverbal. And again, we talk about poker auctions, right? How does somebody bet? Do they bet with a verbal amount? Do they bet with a chip amount? Are they making a big presentation of the bet that they're about to make? Right? Are they cutting their chips really deliberately? Cadences. You always want to be looking into that. I mean, I know Matt, this is his experience. He can't help but notice this stuff. It's just the way he's wired. It's what he does for a living, to try to read where people are coming from, in part to make the experience more seamless. But it also makes you, again, better poker player, a better auction player. I'm fascinated forever by nonverbal behavior.
Yeah, well, Doug, I want to ask you something here in just a second, because I'm having a memory of something that happened in the draft. But Matt, I want to put a bow on the conversation about your auction style, because I want to just be very clear that I think you do a fantastic job. You're obviously a pro. I love watching people that are good at what they do it. But I'm always also a guy who, when I get a bone in my mouth, I'm going to gnaw on that thing until I figure it out. And I think that I wasn't very good. I was okay. I just wasn't very good. And so I get frustrated by that. I look for reasons, and I'm not, my reasons are many and varied. But one of the things I postulated on my show was that the lack of pressure sometimes allowed people who aren't very good at auctions to think about stuff. Now, your comment leading off here tells me that you're thinking, I'm putting the same amount of pressure as a sleeper draft would. But maybe, I don't know, I'm looking for an alternate reason then, because is it the style? We heard the horse race in the other room, and that guy is just going, and he's loud, and he's moving. And does that create anxiety in people? What do you think about that, Matt?
It can. And so that's one of the reasons why, I've been doing this long enough, and I understand the different styles of auction, where I'm trying to bring it down to a level where everybody can understand, number one, and feel comfortable to bid, because sometimes when you go super quick, a lot of people don't understand that. And so, when I'm doing car auctions and we have more professional buyers, I speed up also. But I think the goal is to make everybody feel comfortable, and so they can bid more. And obviously there's always that countdown, whether, you say going once, going twice, or, as we teach in auction school, all I really have to do is raise the pitch of my voice and that I'm almost done. 20 to get 21, that's kind of the end. And so, it's a balancing act because I don't want to short sell people, because that gets people more upset than if I take a little longer.
Sure.
Because we teach people, when you're doing a real auction, the first 5-10 items, you're always selling them super fast, because you want to train people to bid quicker. And then when you get the higher price items in the middle of your auction, you've trained them to bid faster. And so you can get bigger bids and you get more money, which is our goal, because we're working on commission and agency responsibility to the seller, et cetera. So I don't know. I think I am, again, selling quicker than sleeper when you actually get to it. Whether
that's
you
anecdotal, so
that's interesting.
Yeah, when I'm in the room, I'm feeling like it's a very relaxed atmosphere, and everyone's got time to think. But that's anecdotal, because I'm sure if I had a clock and I was going 10, 9, 8, you're absolutely right. So
you could also take away some of that time to think by pressing the bids quicker, meaning get to the key numbers quicker, rather than the slow walk up, which allows people some time to think about, does this player fit my roster and what is my strategy here, who might be invested, who might not be. If you want to take that away, bid 90% of what the player's going to go for anyway, and then that's going to take away some of that thinking time.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
how I bid at my auctions is one of two ways. One, I'm putting it way up there. If somebody starts Jahmyr Gibbs at $10, I'll say 40 or 50, probably 40 because I don't want him for what he probably would. Although at 40, I'll take him 50. I probably would take him actually in my league because the top running backs always go for 60. Or I'm not bidding at all till the very end. Like I want to snipe one bid and wait till it's almost done because I don't want to participate in driving up the price. I want to just buy it at the end if I can.
Yeah, and Doug, that's what I want to ask you because, by the way, I just want to say also that I don't have a single instance of players that I got that I felt like were more expensive because of the style at all. So that's not what I'm saying. So I wasn't sitting in the room like, come on, sell him. Like I felt like the prices were the prices. I wasn't. Whereas the previous year, I did feel like there was one guy, and I complained about it all summer. Matt heard me talk about it, but it was Jalen Hurts. That's what it was because you got him. Damn it, Pianowski. Here we are again. But Doug, let me ask you about that because Matt just made a great point. What is yours? I didn't know when you were going to bid for sure. And Scott, you had quite a bit of money left. You held the hammer for a while in that auction. And I kept thinking, this is Scott's guy. And then you would kind of like get up there and then you would back off. And I thought, man, Scott's part of me was thinking, Scott's pushing people pretty good here, which I liked because I wasn't doing a lot of that. I felt a little bit off balance. And Scott and I talked about that a little bit. Doug, did you feel off balance during the draft at all because it was such a sharp room? Or did you feel like, hey, this is going pretty well?
Well, so I can
Besides
only base
Jackson.
it. I can only base it on how. So of course I have my values, and I have what what the Kings Classic values were. And I don't remember there being a bigger difference in terms of plus money in my favor. So I think I remember looking at it at one point, and I had spent $125, and I think my values on these players was somewhere in the 170s. So I had these, and most of my valuations I thought ended up being pretty good, or at least pretty close. So the fact I was getting, I think I probably had Parker Washington maybe $9 higher than what he went for. Chris Godwin, I know I had higher than 14 or 16, whatever I got him for. So Tucker Kraft was another probably +8, +10 guy. So I don't. There's many years in the Kings Classic auction that I feel somewhat off balance, at least during some part of the draft. But this one I felt more. I guess I can't say more at ease. I usually feel at ease in auctions, but I didn't feel off balance. I don't remember feeling off balance.
Okay. Yeah, I felt it, and I think part of the reason I felt it was I spent more money early than I typically do, but I had made that a point of emphasis for myself that just because it's a 14-teamer doesn't mean I'm not going to have a couple top guys. And so that, even though I went in with that philosophy, it still threw me a little bit because I had spent $89 in the first 28 picks. That's not something I do very often. So I think that nerfed my ability to move a little bit among the deals in the auction. But fellas, it is 5 after 9, and this has been going on for over 2 hours. And I tell you what, I'd love to keep going, but I'm losing some steam over the last 6 hours of the last 3 nights. Thank you guys for being here. And I want to go around here and real quick and just make sure that everyone knows where they can find you. Scott, we know you're over at Yahoo. Where are your socials, and what do you got that you're working on right now?
Yeah, Scott_Pianowski on X. Pianow, I believe it is Pianow on Blue Sky, but just any general Scott Pianowski search will get you to my stuff, and a lot of exciting stuff over at Yahoo. We just launched a big draft kit. We've hired some really exciting new talent this year, and I know Matt kept mentioning sleepers having a place to do auctions. You can certainly do your auctions on Yahoo Sports. We have a really good applet, and the draft client is very intuitive. Once you get in the league, Drew, I know that was a little bit of a stumbling block for you last couple of days, but Yahoo's a great place to play, and we hope you give it a shot.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm excited to get back in because I haven't been in one in a couple years. I know we used to rotate the Kings Classic platform, but it's been stuck on ESPN for a little while. Doug, tell everybody where they can find you.
Yeah, you're going to find everything I have at the Huddle now, and at the socials, Blue Sky and Twitter/X is just what you see on the screen at Doug Orth.
Okay. And I just covered you up. Sorry about that. But I love this comment from Chad. Big fan of the show, but people complain about me jumping the price up quick. That tells me I should keep doing it. I agree. I mean, you're there to irritate people. You're there to like poke people. So yeah, thank you, JP. You've been in the chat a lot this over the last couple nights, and everybody who has showed up. Thank you so much, Matt. You are an actual real life auctioneer. Where is your auction house again? Is it in Fort Wayne?
Right next to Fort Wayne, Auburn, Indiana, the home of the classic car capital of the world, where we started the collector car auctions.
All right. And it's draftauctioneer.com, correct?
Yes. And so since you were talking with Dave Richard, I had taken these down, but I actually put back up some actual live auction videos from, it's like 2014, 15, 16. Of our home league that we videotape so people can kind of watch an auction go. But I 100% think we should.
Is this free on the website?
Yeah,
we should.
Absolutely. Yeah,
it's a great
idea.
idea.
And then one thing that's not free, but I think you guys at least would appreciate this is a game called Modern Art. It's maybe $25-$30, and it's an auction style game, but it helps you manipulate markets. And I think it's a great game for people that are in fantasy leagues to understand how to leverage how you bid and when you bid on certain things. And it's a great game. I'm at stickers on them with our company Kruse on them, and I see them all over my county. Like somehow they show up in people's basements, and they are not comfortable.
They're not comfortable.
Not really. I mean, they're just folding chairs. I mean, they had a little pad, but not enough to matter.
Yeah.
But,
I got like this much, and it's good for about 5 seconds when I sit down. All right, guys, this is scintillating close to the live stream. But this is actually kind of fun. I would like to do this more, but I have a family. They don't know what I look like, so I'm going to go see them. And I just want to thank everybody out there in the entire, from the people who did the leagues. We had 24 people who dedicated 2 nights to doing the auctions and being grilled, live on air while I'm telling them that I don't like the price they just paid for somebody. That's not easy to do. That's not easy to hear. It's not easy to be in the room and do that stuff. So thank you all for sacrificing your time. Thank you for all the views over the last couple of nights. We've had a couple thousand people checking out this thing over the last 3 nights. And hey, the only thing I can do is try to push the auction format forward every year, and hopefully the Salary Cap Summit comes back strong for a year 3. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
All right. Yeah, thanks, Drew. And last thing I'll say, when I tried to get our league to finally switch to an auction, which we did 10, 12 years ago, I took several guys to other people's auctions where I was doing their auction draft so they could get comfortable doing it. So that's one way to kind of spread the word, is get them to come to somebody else's auction, and they'll kind of get a feel for it, and it'll be less intimidating.
Yeah. I think we got to get people in the room. I think that's how we'll close it tonight. We got to get butts in seats to just practice, just to do it. And once they do it, they're going to love it. So, all right. Thanks again to all the guests tonight. I'm going to kick you guys out of here. Thank you to Matt Kruse, real life auctioneer, Doug Orth from the Huddle, auction extraordinaire and tough competitor. Thank you, Doug. And my buddy, Mensch, Scott Pianowski. Thank you all for being here. It's been an incredible couple of nights, and that's going to do it for me, folks, too. I'm going to get you all out of here. I can't believe you're all still here at the end. It makes me want to keep going, but love you all for the support. This thing doesn't come together without you guys in the chat, without you watching, without the time that you spend consuming my content. I never once stop appreciating that, and I never once take it for granted that I'm not here without all of you. So thank you so much. That is not a throwaway statement. That's not a nonsense statement that people just say. I truly mean that. I hope you understand that. So thank you all for being here. The auction brief is adjourned, and I am out.